tonight for dinner, I wanted to make something a little bit special. We had a little bit of extra time this week, so we're kind of doing a couple of date nights at home. This is the Longhorn Steakhouse Parmesan crusted chicken, or a kind of a version of it. And then I've made some super easy loaded mashed potatoes, and then super delicious, lightly sauteed snap peas. This came together really, really easy. Nothing in here was actually complicated. Just takes a little bit of coordinating and multitasking. But I am so excited to eat this. This smells so good, and I really, really hope you guys love this video. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of prep and marinate our chicken. I am just doing one chicken breast. This is a pretty large one, but we're having a couple of big sides with this, so I don't think we need two. I'm going to do just a little bit of cutting. I'm not doing a whole lot of cutting, so I've just laid some plastic wrap down. I'm just going to do just a little bit of cutting. I just want to kind of separate in the middle here, and I've got the smooth side down. There's a seam that runs right along the middle. I just want to separate that a little bit. And then I'm going to lay down some more plastic wrap, and we are just going to flatten this with a hammer. A lot of people like to use a gallon-sized Ziploc bag for this, and that works perfectly fine. I just only have one gallon-sized Ziploc bag, and that's what I'll be marinating the chicken in, so I'm just going to use plastic wrap for this. And all I'm doing is I'm just getting this to be really thin across the board. It's going to kind of plump up while it's cooking, so I want it super, super thin for marinating. All right, my chicken is pretty thin, and it's kind of just one big piece right now. I'm going to go ahead and just trim off some of this extra fat, and I don't really want to do that just on the plastic, so I'm going to go ahead and bring my cutting board out now. I'm just going to trim off some of this extra fat, and I like to throw all of the pieces that I'm cutting off into the toaster oven for my dog to have as a snack later. He always loves it, and I throw away less chicken if I do that. You just have to make sure there's no bones if you do that, and I think that was cartilage I just took out. I don't know if dogs can have cartilage, so I'm taking that out too. And then now's kind of a good time to separate this into individual cutlets too. I think I'll get 3 out of this one, out of this chicken breast. Yeah, so I've got 3 cutlets, and then I've got a few smaller pieces that we'll just kind of fry up and keep those separate. And now comes the easiest marinade you've ever seen in your whole entire life. I am just going to put, oh, I closed this. I'm going to put my 3 cutlets into this bag. And I'll put my little pieces in there too. I'm going to wash my hands, and then we're going to add our marinade. All right, so our chicken marinade, I've got my chicken in here. I am just using Olive Garden Italian dressing. You can use whatever Italian dressing you like. This is the one that I have right now, so this is the one that I'm using. It has a bunch of seasonings. It's got sugar, it's got salt, it's got everything that makes a good marinade. So I've just put some in there, a little more than enough to make sure every piece is coated, and then to make sure it's sitting, kind of soaking in the marinade. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. I kind of want them to be a little bit submerged. And then the key to a good marinade is to make sure that there's no extra air. If you vacuum seal your bag that you're using to marinate, your meat will marinate much faster and much more evenly. I am not vacuum sealing because I'm just using a Ziploc bag. So I've kind of just rolled it up to get as much air out as possible. And I'm just going to let this sit in the fridge for probably at least 30 minutes, but it's probably going to be a little bit closer to an hour for me. and then we were gonna come back and we're gonna pan fry this. My chicken has been marinating for about an hour. It's still in the fridge. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on my sides. I am gonna make some loaded mashed potatoes because they are pretty easy. And I'm just gonna cut up some red potatoes. Russet potatoes work great for loaded mashed potato, well, for any mashed potatoes, but I have red potatoes right now and I like to keep the skin on for red potatoes. I don't think it's so great for russet potatoes. I just don't like the texture of that skin once it's been boiled. But red potatoes tend to stay pretty nice. I think that's going to be plenty. I don't need to do this last one. I'm just going to give these a quick rinse and then we're going to fill them up with our broth to cook. All right, I've rinsed those and I've just kind of covered them with water. I don't cook my mashed potatoes in just plain water. I always add some sort of bouillon. I'm out of chicken bouillon. Normally I would do half chicken and half garlic, but I'm just gonna do garlic bouillon today because that's what I have. And then my pot tells me how many cups are in here, and this of course is including the potatoes. We're almost all the way up at the 4-cup mark. So I'm gonna do about 4 cups worth of bouillon. And actually that is basically gonna finish this. I've gotten most of it out of the jar, but this stuff is really concentrated. So even the little bit that's left in here, I think can add quite a bit of flavor. I'm just gonna put a little bit of water in this and shake it up and add it into the pot. All right, I got basically all of it off of the sides. Just gonna add that in. And that is it. I'm gonna go put this on the stove and let these potatoes come to a boil, and then we will get started on our snap peas. Snap peas are a super easy side. They actually don't even cook for all that long. I'm just gonna heat them up and cook them a little bit, but I do like to kind of get rid of this hard part of the stem first, and I just pinch off that pointy end and then peel down and then set it in a bowl. All right, all my snap peas are prepped. Sometimes you'll get one that just doesn't look so great in the bag. This is like just not doing great. I think these are supposed to be washed and ready to eat. They are. It says washed and ready to enjoy, but I think it's generally pretty important to wash your veggies anyways. I'm pregnant, so I double wash all my vegetables before I eat them. And when I get something like this, definitely wash really well. But these are all prepped. I'm gonna give these a really good wash and I'm gonna let them just soak in some salt water for about 10 or so minutes. That'll kind of help bring out any more impurities, and then we will get them ready for cooking. So this recipe calls for a little bit of ranch, and I don't have any ranch, so we're kind of gonna make our own. I'm gonna do probably about half a cup of mayonnaise, and I'm gonna do just a little bit of sour cream, probably about a tablespoon, and I'm just gonna add some of my ranch seasoning packet. I never make the entire packet at once because it all just goes to waste when I do that, so I just like to use what I need, and then I roll this back up and put it in my pantry. I think we're gonna take probably about a tablespoon of the seasoning packet, and we're just gonna give that a mix. I'm gonna add just a little bit more. Maybe another teaspoon or so. That was a pretty big chunk, but yeah, we're at about a teaspoon. So about 4 teaspoons total. I think that'll be plenty. If it's too thick, you can thin it out with a little bit of milk. I normally use milk, I just don't have any today. If you don't have any milk, you can thin it out with a little bit of water, but I'm pretty happy with this consistency. I want it to be a little bit thick for this recipe anyways. And I'm just gonna fold this up and put it back in the pantry. Into this mixture, we are gonna mix in quite a bit of cheese. I've got some provolone, just a few slices left. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop those up really small, and I'm just gonna mix them in. If you have a block of cheese, you can just shred it. If you have slices like I do, you can kind of rip it up or chop it up into bigger pieces if you want, but I really want these to melt together, so I'm just doing really small pieces. And I'm gonna kind of break this up because I really want them to be separated in the bowl. And I'm realizing right at this very moment that I'm gonna be putting this in the microwave. So I am going to switch to a plastic bowl so it can go in the microwave. If you don't have provolone, you can do mozzarella. This is probably 1/3 of a cup of provolone. I might add a little bit of mozzarella just for a little bit of extra volume in here. I normally probably do about 1/2 cup. If I'm doing something like a creamy cheesy mixture, I like to do a lot of cheese. Just gonna add a little bit, and same thing, you know, if you have a block of cheese and you are in a position to shred it, then shred it. Otherwise, just chop it up into pieces. That'll be fine. My dog is sitting here staring at me. I think I've forgotten the cheese tax. All right, that's a lot of extra cheese. So we're probably at a little over 1/2 cup of mozzarella and provolone. Nothing wrong with more cheese. I'm gonna give that a little bit of a mix. And then of course it wouldn't be a Parmesan crusted chicken if we weren't adding in a lot of Parmesan as well. So I'm just gonna grate in probably about the same amount, 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. I'm gonna add, it's kind of a little, I know it's chunky, there's cheese pieces in here, but there's not quite as much of the creaminess as I wanted. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more sour cream. Probably just another tablespoon. I think that'll be plenty. Yep, I think that is perfect. All right, I'm gonna set that aside, and we are going to actually start cooking our chicken right about now. Well, let me cut a piece of cheese for the cheese boy. Okay, ready? But you can't tell your brothers because I don't have any for them. Ready? I just gave Joey a piece of cheese, and Stitch like ran from upstairs. He heard it. He could smell it. All right, our pan has been heating up for quite a few minutes. If you splash a little bit of water in your stainless steel pan and the water beads up like this, then you know it is ready to go. So we are just gonna add in our marinated chicken. And I'm not doing anything else special with this. I'm just taking it straight out of the bag and putting it in my oiled pan. Gonna add in quite a bit of oil. We just want to kind of cover the bottom of the pan. And then the chicken is going to go straight in. And if you can, add the chicken smooth side down first, because that will help cook it and that will help keep the non-stick. All right, that is all of my chicken. I'm going to let that sear on that side for probably 5 or 6 minutes. And then we are gonna flip it and cook the other side. I could see my chicken was kind of starting to cup a little bit, so I've added a weight to it. But now I think they are probably browning a little bit more evenly. I'll flip that one back over in a few minutes. But I want them to just cook all the way through. I'm gonna set this back on and let those finish cooking, and then we're just gonna take them out to rest while we work on our sides. My chicken is fully cooked. I've microwaved my cheese mixture for about a minute total, but I did it about 30 seconds at a time. And we're getting a really, really nice, cheesy, stretchy mixture here. So I'm gonna just add this to my chicken breasts. And it's okay if you've still got some kind of cheesy clumps in here, because this is going in the toaster oven. It'll melt the rest of the way. I just want to get it mostly melted in the microwave. All right, those are all really nicely coated. I've used up, let's just now do this. Now I've used up all of my cheese mixture. And for the breading, I've got 4 tablespoons of melted butter. I'm gonna add in, where's my cheese? I've got 4 tablespoons of melted butter, and I'm gonna add in a little bit more Parmesan cheese. Probably just about a 1/4 cup. This doesn't need to be a whole lot. I just really want that Parmesan flavor coming out everywhere it can. And then we're also gonna add in probably a little over 1/2 cup of Panko breadcrumbs. And we're just gonna give that a good mix. It should be kind of crumbly. You don't want this to be super wet at all, just a little sandy almost. I'm just gonna add probably about a teaspoon of garlic powder. And then give that one more mix. And then this is really gonna crisp up very nicely in the toaster oven. All right, this is nearly ready. Before we get too far on this, I really want to start my snap peas so they've got plenty of time to cook. These have been soaking in salt water for a little while, so I'm just going to give this a really good rinse. And this is just about the easiest thing in the world. I'm just going to kind of coat them with olive oil. I'm going to do some garlic powder. And some salt. And a little bit of pepper. I don't really have any measurements for this. It's probably, you know, 1/2 teaspoon of each for that one, what was that, an 8-ounce packet of snap peas. And they don't even have to be tossed perfectly, because all I'm gonna do is saute these in a pan for, you know, 5 or 6 minutes until they are heated through and they're going to be a little shiny and a little bright. It's okay that there's a little bit of water still on them, because that's just going to evaporate in the pan. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the pan, and we'll come back and finish this up. All right, my snap peas are in the pan. We're going to add our breading on top of our cheese mixture. And then I'm kind of going to press it in. That will help everything stay in place. But then it will also get us a really nice crispy top. All right, everything is really nicely coated. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in my toaster oven on a low broiler. I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. It'll maybe take 3 or 4 minutes. And while that's happening, we're gonna work on our mashed potatoes. Our potatoes are fully cooked. Everything else is just about done, so we're gonna go ahead and turn these into mashed potatoes. I'm just gonna start by draining out most of my boiling liquid. I'm just gonna keep a couple of tablespoons in here, not a whole lot. And I can always add more back in if there's not enough. I'm gonna add in 1/2 stick of butter. And then I'm gonna kind of just give these a mash. I just want to get that butter melted and the potatoes broken up a little bit. And then once that's mostly melted, we're just gonna give it a mix. They're not quite as thin as I want them, but before I add any more of the potato water back in, I'm gonna add in a couple of tablespoons of sour cream, just about 1 tablespoon. And I'm going to see how it comes out after that. It's a little closer, but I am going to add in just a splash of this, I think. And this, of course, is just potato and garlic flavor. So this is just going to add to the potatoes. It's not going to do any harm. And then from there, we're just going to add in a whole bunch of shredded cheese and some chives. And I've got these lightly dried chives. It's really hard to find fresh chives at my grocery store out here, so this is what I usually use. We don't need a whole lot. If you've got bacon bits in your fridge, or if you wanted to fry up some bacon and chop it and throw it in here, that would be great. Otherwise, shredded cheese, potato skins, and chives, a little bit of sour cream makes for some pretty good mashed potatoes. I'm just going to cover that and set it aside, and I think everything else is done. All right, our chicken is done. It is super crispy on top. It's a little awkward to remove from the pan, but that's all right. And that cheesy mixture has melted really, really nicely the rest of the way. And then, of course, we are going to load up each plate with some beautiful loaded mashed potatoes. Those are pretty cheesy too. This is a good dinner. We've got like 4 different kinds of cheese on this plate today. And of course, we can't forget our greens. And that is it. Dinner is done. This is a little bit of a date night meal. It takes a little bit longer, but each individual thing is actually pretty simple to make. None of this is super complicated. It is cooked through, but I can see that it's not dry. If you take it out of the pan when it's just cooked through, it'll stay juicy. And I've got some cheese, I've got some Crispies. Cheers. This is so delicious. I haven't actually had the Longhorn Steakhouse recipe, but I've made a few Parmesan crusted things like this, and it always turns out, of course, absolutely fantastic. This is something that I think you should definitely give it a shot. It is absolutely worth the little bit of extra effort it takes for a nice date night at home.